All right, good evening and welcome to today's broadcast. Of course, my name is Tweetwe Ayeno, and this is 30 minutes with me. Very sorry, apology that I'm starting a bit late today. Very sorry for that. Thank you very much for taking time out to be a part of the program, today's broadcast. Okay, so yes, is what we want to do today. First off, let me just remember the late General Sani Abacha. Today, nine died for 1998, and I remember then that there was jubilation everywhere that Abacha died. People celebrated. It was as if the problem to Nigeria's the man behind Nigerian problem don't die, and that going forward we no go ever fit dey bad again, that things go dey better. But since 1999, when General Sani Abacha died, we all know that we are still in the problem together, and things are not really gotten better because some of the things we complained about during Abacha's time, we still face them to date in Nigeria. So, and which of course includes electricity and everything. That's my daughter, Fumilayo. We are live. You're not supposed to be part of my broadcast, huh? Sorry. You want my phone? Okay, really? In the midst of a broadcast, you want my phone? I can't give you my phone. Sorry. Yeah, because I can't give you. Sorry. Go and get your mom's phone, not mine. Okay, so I'm very sorry for that, but yeah, I'm doing this from home, so it's allowed. So, Sani Abacha, he don't die, but we not forget the man name because to date we still dey wonder how much Sani Abacha really steal from Nigeria, because the more we talk about Sani Abacha, the more we realize that the man money not dey finish. So, well, that's for Sani Abacha. We hope that different governments across the world will continue to refund the money to us. And one of the reasons I'm mentioning Sani Abacha is not just because today is make am 22 years ago when he died. Yeah, not just that, but for the fact that over the years we've always had this problem about people who loot from Nigeria and how much of that money find their way into foreign nations like London and the rest. And so, even our focus today is about Diezani. It is very important that we mention Abacha because we both understand that the money where Abacha steal from Nigeria, foreign governments use and do business in several ways before they start returning the money back to us. And now that we are talking about Diezani, the same thing is about to happen with Diezani because in case you don't know, recently talking about 2000 this year, just January this year, you know, the acting chairman of the EFCC, that is the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, said that the United Kingdom is frustrating the trial of Diezani. And one of the things he said is that UK government is frustrating corruption trial. This was on January 22nd. He alleged that some foreign countries were sabotaging the efforts of the commission in its fight against corruption in Nigeria. He also alleged this was during the zonal meeting when in the follow journalists talk for Ibadan, the zonal office of the commission. He didn't really mention, but at some point he said that the EFCC will not be frustrated, especially in the case of former Petroleum Minister Diezani Alison-Madueke, who has been indicted for graft and is currently in the UK. Now, why this is very important for us to take note of, I'm going to share a video with you. I don't know. I know some of you might have seen the video of a lady speaking on how London is safe haven for looters and corrupts leaders in Africa. So I'll share that video with you. It's very long, but we won't take all of the video. But now, another thing is, before we go to that video, let me talk about Diezani's dual citizenship. You know, last week there is this news everywhere that is being offered citizenship by Dominican Republic. And what that means, according to some people, is that if she finds her way into Dominican Republic, it's going to be very difficult for she to be extradited to Nigeria, because we don't have this extradition or treaty with Dominican Republic. So, yeah, Dele Momodu yesterday said that he has found out from some sources that is untrue, that there were this talk about getting the citizenship of Dominican Republic, but that was dropped since 2015, and that is not the case. So Diezani is not a citizen of Dominican Republic. One thing, however, I just want us to know about Dominican Republic is that it is very easy to get their citizenship. One easy way to do that is get a property in Dominican Republic. Once you get a property, the Dominican Economic Citizenship Program, you'll be offered citizenship. And this comes after you have maintained ownership of that property for 5 years. So it's not really easy. If 5 years is the case, that would mean that Diezani perhaps don't buy property for there before 2015, or perhaps by 2015. And then, if you are just a foreigner who would like to become a citizen of the Dominican Republic, this is what you need to know. You must, first of all, live in the country for 5 years after you have gotten a residence permit. And once you have that, you thereafter have to apply for citizenship. So the process is not that easy as people make can be, but it's so far that. But we understand as well that nothing with money enough you do, because the Dominican Republic is just a very small nation with about 700,000 people in the Caribbean country. So that is just it. With temporary residency for 5 years before obtaining permanent residency, which you need for at least 2 years, you know. And this means that after 5 years of legal residence, you must have lived in that country for 5 years. So that is one angle. But the key focus for the program for me today is that the accusation by Ibrahim Magu that UK is protecting Diezani. Let's not forget that the latest report before Ibrahim Magu's statement is that Diezani is facing trial in the UK for different facing corruption trial in the UK, and this has been on since 2016. And to date, we expected that after every effort by the Nigerian government, she'll be extradited. They'll go over to us, at least for her to face trial in Nigeria. So if you are someone who doubts if the London or UK government can be capable of a thing like that, I want you to just pay attention to this particular video. The reason you have to listen to this video is what some citizens in the UK have had to say about London being a safe haven for looters, corrupt officials from Africa. So next time you're thinking about the big businesses in London, let this video come to mind. And this is, I'm going to take the video now. This is a video by this lady, Lawson. Yes. This is what she has to say. Just listen. I'm going to play for just a few minutes. Then we'll come back to analyze this. Do not forget that you can be part of this broadcast. Make your contribution known. Just drop a message and we'll get to see the message. I get to read it out for everyone else to hear your contribution. This is what she has to say. All right. Sorry, guys. I just discovered that there is no audio input from that particular tape, or so. I'm just going to find out why. Um, I'm very sorry. Thank you very much, Gabriel Shooks. You called my attention to that. I'm going to find out why there is no audio to this, but why I'm going to try to find that out. What she's just trying to explain that I can give a summary. I really wanted us to listen is how much London allows for looters, especially from Africa, corrupt government officials, to take money out of the shores of Africa and take over there. So, why this is very important is for us to understand the geopolitics, the geopolitical game going on in the world, which is about supporting crime in one part of the world so that the proceeds of crime, of this criminality, can come to your country. So this has been the problem all over the years. You see crisis happening in one end because people understand that if I commit a crime in one country, take for example in Nigeria, I can just run out of the country to any other country. Now, it is not the fault of that particular country that your citizen commit crime in your country. Maybe they are not the reason, maybe they are not responsible for the crime committed by your citizen here in Nigeria. Maybe we should blame Nigeria government for allowing so much to happen. Maybe we should blame ourselves, Nigerians, for allowing that to happen. But one of the things is that thank you very much, Gabriel. Thank you very much, Gabriel Schultz. So, but one of the things we have to understand is that if there is nowhere to run to, if you as a criminal, as you have got nowhere to run to, definitely you want to think twice before you commit a crime. And now, this is not to say that we don't have Nigerians who steal within Nigeria, steals from the government and still reside in Nigeria. That is not the point. But the point is that if you look at over the years since before 1999, if you see how much have been stolen out of Nigeria, it is much more compared to the amount stolen from Nigeria that is within Nigeria. So what happens is that in this audio, I'll see what I can do to that. I'll just take another break and try to see what the problem is. But one of the things I'm trying to say is that in that audio, it's further established the fact that London is nothing. London survives on loot. London encourages people to, because whether from Asia or Africa or the Middle East, they take this money into London to buy properties in the eyebrow areas of London, which even those will be UK citizens not afford to live in some of these places as it is already. So whether Ibrahim Magu is correct or wrong does not remove the fact that London is a safe haven for criminals. You know, they steal from Nigeria, and there is this allegation, not even an allegation, it has been established that even Dan Itete, some of the proceeds of the crimes he committed in Nigeria, he acquired properties in Malibu, in the USA, and just all over the world. So we cannot always listen to foreign governments and listen to them to tell us about how to run our country and let them design all the modalities for us to fight crime, when in essence they are the major beneficiary of these crimes committed in Africa. If you talk about any country in Africa where leaders in Africa don't embezzle money, they take this money abroad because number one, they believe that it's better abroad, because if the economy of their country collapse, the money in dollar does not really drop. So that is why they find it very easy, and they'll think about that to say, let's move our money, let's change it to dollar and let's move it out of the country. You see? And they either move it to Asia. Now, some of this money are going to Asia, but before now, London, and even till now, London still remains the capital. So I won't be surprised if Ibrahim Magu is correct that London, UK government is frustrating the corruption trial of Diezani. Yeah, and if at all Diezani becomes the citizen of the Dominican Republic, what does that mean for Nigeria? It does not mean the end to our corruption trial. It does not mean that she will not be prosecuted whenever or that she cannot be extradited to Nigeria. One of the things it means is that she probably would avoid going to countries or finding herself in countries that have this extradition treaty with Nigeria. So, and that is the only way perhaps she would not be extradited back to Nigeria to face trial. So I'm not saying she's guilty, but because nobody is guilty until proven in the court of law. But one of the things I'm trying to establish in this conversation is that it is time for us to stop waiting for foreign governments to tell us how to fight corruption, believing everything they say to us or they say to us, because instability in one country at times can be economic boom to another country. Because this money the way they take from us, just imagine the money where Abacha alone, because as I talk about Diezani, we will still talk about Abacha, because today making 22 years since Abacha died, and he don't credit us since that time. Now, just imagine the benefits where Swiss government and other countries in the world where Abacha money they just imagine how much development they don't achieve with that money before they give them back to us. Just imagine. So by the time we steal our money, carry from here, go do all of these things, they go come give this money back to us in form of aid to say, oh, we are supporting education in the Northeast. Where as funny as that may sound, another thing is the fact that even if they leave the money with us here, they will still steal them, maybe, because some of the money where they return for Abacha self, native they still steal some of the Abacha money. So as much as this government, other governments of the world, will support your citizen to steal from you, we will also understand that that is possible because we are not doing much as a nation. That is you and I. We are not asking critical questions to ask what is happening. And one of those things recently is the amount so far, the donations to COVID-19. At the end of the day, if we are not careful, there will be no accountability. Everything will just end and COVID-19 story will end like that. Just the same way that they are still finding it to account for how the several billions allocated for the National Social Intervention Program. That is talk about the school feeding program, Empower, and trader money and all of the rest. They never really establish them. So when government they tell us they share money, COVID-19 relief fund, people get 5,000, 20,000. Oh, na lie. Because in the recent, they're not they publish the writing for us to see the information, and everywhere you turn, some people they say they're not receiving. So that's now the big problem with corruption in Nigeria. And you want to ask yourself why we will still continue to have our citizens steal from us and take to other countries. Because they don't believe in this country. Majority of them don't believe in what is going on in Nigeria, because they would rather become citizens of the UK, United States of America, or any other country and come make money from Nigeria and carry go there. That's now the major problem with the battle for Nigeria. So I really wish that video, so I'm just going to take a break there and see if I can get audio out of that video. And if we get audio from it, then we'll listen to a part of the video. That video is very interesting, but if we can't get the audio, I'm going to upload the video later so that you get to see it. This was a speech during the TEDx House of House of Parliament in the UK by Auntie Lawson. So just let's go for this short break, guys. Just stay with me. I want to make sure we get that video out so that we can get to listen to what she get to say there. On this break, I'm going on this break with this speech by Patrick Lumumba, PLO Lumumba.
From
Okay, let's go.
From ignorance, disease, and poverty. On the 24th day of May, perhaps the most powerful speech ever made by an African leader was delivered by Ghana's Kwame Nkrumah. And he reminded the leaders who were present on that day about a number of things. One, he told them that not to delude themselves, that by regaining their independence, the erstwhile colonizer would recoil and remain inactive. That in fact, the erstwhile colonial master was going to be more pernicious, but in a very subtle way. Kwame Nkrumah was right. He reminded his audience that going forward it was necessary and indeed urgent that Africans should begin to think as one whole, because if they remained in disunity, they would remain weak and vulnerable and therefore susceptible to manipulation. Kwame Nkrumah was right. He reminded his audience that because many of, if not all of the African countries were artificial, they were created in Berlin, and the boundaries were artificial, but he urged his audience that they should respect the inviolability of the boundaries, because if they tried to redraw the boundaries, conflict would never end. And that was reinforced in 1964 in Cairo on the document. Very subtle way, Kwame Nkrumah was right. He reminded his audience that going forward it was necessary and indeed urgent that Africans should begin to think as one whole, because if they remained
All right, welcome back.
They would remain weak.
Yeah, I think I've seen what the problem is. I'm going to get that video up now, and we have the video live. So welcome back. That was a speech by PLO Mulumba given in 2019. Yeah. During a retreat, for a military retreat in Kigali, Rwanda. So, okay, just stay with me, guys. I've seen what the problem is, and I'm going to bring up the video now. So, we'll have that particular video up. Yes, okay. Okay, just a couple of minutes. I'm trying to bring it up because just not forget, doing this all by myself from my living room here. It's not like this is not a complete studio with our with you know, the tech and control guys. So I'm just doing this all by myself. So yeah, I'm almost there. I'll get the video out now. And yeah, okay. So all right. Yeah. So now I know what the thing is. We are going to have the audio now. Yes, we're going to have the audio. Yeah, you see that there? I have it on screen now. So let me just do something quickly. So yeah. Okay. Okay. So now. This is the video, and you're going to listen to it. So guys, let's go now. I hope you enjoy it. Trust me, you're going to enjoy it. If you've not seen this before, for those who have seen it, you know what it's about already. She's going to explain in detail how London fuels corruption. Yes, so let's go. Do not forget, kindly let me know if you can hear the audio. Do let me know if you can hear it.
So, here we are in the heart of London, a world capital. And there's a lot that's very good about that. Let's think, it's a cultural powerhouse, it's an all-night party venue. Realistically, I don't get to see much of those two at the moment because I have a 2-year-old, but I understand that other people are enjoying them. And of course, it's the economic heart of Britain. Think of all those talented people flocking to London every year looking for work. Some of them head up the road to Soho, trying to get into the creative industries. Some of them head over to Old Street, trying to get into tech. Some of them hang around here, trying to get into politics. And there are plenty who want to follow the money into law and property and finance. But there's a side to London that's less talked about, and it's the role that this city plays in fueling corruption in some of the poorest countries in the world, and the role of some of our bankers, some of our lawyers, and some of our property market in helping that to happen. London is headquarters to HSBC, which was recently fined nearly $2 billion by the US authorities for repeatedly accepting cash that had been laundered by Mexican drug cartels. During the time that HSBC was accepting this dirty cash, 35,000 people died at the hands of the drug gangs in Mexico. London is also home to branches of NatWest, Royal Bank of Scotland, Barclays, UBS, and HSBC again, which accepted millions of pounds from corrupt Nigerian state governors who were paying in the bribes that they'd been accepting. London is also home to the High Court, which in a recent case involving a corrupt billion-dollar Nigerian oil deal, decided that one of the middlemen was entitled to a 10% cut, without questioning whether the British court should be dividing up the proceeds of corruption in this way. And London is also home to a property market that's very popular with the world's corrupt. Now, most people think of corruption as something that happens somewhere else. It's over there, and it's nothing to do with us. But what I'm going to talk about is the role of some actors right here in London in helping some of it to happen. Now, I don't know about you, but this makes me feel rather sad and angry. I love London, and there's so much that's good about it, but this all makes me feel rather ashamed. I work for Global Witness, a campaigning organisation that investigates the deep links between natural resources, conflict, corruption, and environmental devastation. We spend half our time as investigative journalists, unpicking the dirty deals and following the money to those responsible. Then we use our findings to campaign for change. My colleague, Charmian Gooch, one of our co-founders, won this year's TED Prize. TED wanted to recognise our campaign that's calling for an end to the globally accepted practice of allowing companies to incorporate whilst keeping their real owners hidden. This is something that allows all manner of corrupt deals, tax evading deals, drug trafficking, people trafficking, you name it. Serious, horrible crimes usually move the money using a company with hidden owners, which is why we're very pleased that the UK has just said it will bring in a register of the real owners of companies. We've also campaigned for 15 years for new laws that would require oil and mining companies to disclose what they pay to governments. Now, this is on the basis that the people of Nigeria might stand a chance of holding their government to account for the missing oil billions if they knew how much should have been paid in the first place. That we've now won new laws in Washington and in Brussels that would make this happen. But some of the oil companies are trying to gut these laws. I wonder what they're so worried is going to come out if they have to reveal their payments. We'll come back to that in a moment, because I should perhaps first explain how on earth I got here. So I started out as a journalist, thinking that that would be my way to change the world. But I soon became rather frustrated just writing the stories, one after the other. And so I became a campaigner, and I campaigned for several years for controls on the arms trade. But I became rather down dealing only with the supply of horrible hardware and not the economic injustices that so often lead to the demand for it. And so I became an aid worker, and I found myself in Sierra Leone, just at the end of a civil war which had been going on for 10 years. And that is when I started to understand the resource curse firsthand. Sierra Leone is fabulously wealthy in natural resources: diamonds, gold, bauxite, titanium. But the diamonds had just fueled a civil war, and the people were some of the poorest on earth. In one of the main diamond towns I went to, there was just one main road through the middle of the town, and half of the shops on it were diamond dealerships. They weren't selling diamonds, they were packed to the ceilings with TVs and stereos and generators and bicycles, which they were using to pay the local diggers, who were bringing in diamonds worth many times more. The other half of the road was aid agency compounds, one after the other. And apart from a few stalls on the street, that was it for economic life in this town. Now, there's something going really wrong when a country's natural resource wealth is not only failing to benefit ordinary people, but is destabilizing politics and fueling war. The aid work I was involved in was wonderful and seemed to be much needed. We were helping to reunite displaced children with their families. We were supporting the reintegration into their communities of girls who'd been abducted and raped by the rebels and forced to be their wives. And we were raising funds for an amputee football team who played the most extraordinary football on crutches. But as long as the majority of those natural resource revenues continued to make their way mostly into companies' coffers and government officials' offshore private bank accounts, then I felt like I was pouring water into a leaky bucket. In short, the problem was much closer to home. And so now here I find myself back here in London, my city that is one of the foremost butlers to the world's corrupt. Now you're right, there is plenty of corrupt money in Dubai and Singapore too, but this one's my city, this is the city I live in. This one's my city, full of bank accounts stuffed with corrupt cash, my city full of lawyers and accountants and trust and company service providers who spend their days setting up shell companies whose only purpose is to move money from one place to another. Let's look at that financial sector. A couple of years ago, our banking regulator finally admitted that 3/4 of British banks weren't doing enough to establish what were the source of the funds that their customers were depositing, which is basically an acknowledgement that the UK is wide open to corrupt funds. Now, having corrupt funds in our bank accounts here is not just a side effect of that corruption that's happening over there somewhere. It's precisely what allows it to happen. It's what allows the dictator to shore up his undemocratic power, to keep funds off budget and out of sight of his opponents, and to line up a bolt hole for when it all goes wrong. There is simply no point in stealing billions of dollars if you have to keep it under the bed. It doesn't fit, for starters, but you want to go and put it somewhere where you can enjoy it. As a Nigerian anti-corruption investigator put it to us, if you're going to fly a plane, you don't take off until you know where you're going to land. We know Ukrainian activists who are hopping mad that their country's fledgling democracy has been repeatedly undermined by a trail of corruption that leads straight back here to London. $23 million in funds associated with the regime that's just gone has now been frozen in the UK. Too late, we'd say. And it turns out that the ex-president's palace was part-owned by a UK shell company. So that's the finance sector. Let's have a quick look at property. Now, London's booming property market isn't particularly popular with our own generation rent who can't afford to find somewhere to live, but it's very popular with international hot money looking for somewhere to hang out for a while. The Financial Times recently did an analysis of land registry data to show that over a 13-year period to 2012, 40,000 properties in London alone were bought using offshore companies. That basically means no one knows who they belong to. Now, the tax fiddling reasons for using an offshore company to buy your house are increasingly recognised, but corrupt money likes property too. One of those 40,000 houses would have been the £10 million house up in Hampstead, owned by one of Colonel Gaddafi's sons through a British Virgin Islands company. And another 4 properties in North London were owned, again through a British Virgin Islands company, by one of those corrupt Nigerian state governors I mentioned earlier, who paid for them using bribes and the proceeds of ripping off his people who'd voted for him. You usually only find out about properties like this once the person involved is prosecuted or pushed from power, which doesn't happen often enough. And then there's our ancient and venerable legal system. Let me tell you a story about that. So look, imagine that you have plans to rob a bank. Imagine that you come to an arrangement with one of your accomplices as to how much he's going to be paid. Imagine that your accomplice then takes you to court to claim his fee, and the court makes a decision as to how much he's entitled to without referring to the fact that a bank has just been robbed. That is basically what's just happened here in the High Court in London, except that the man involved hadn't been robbing a bank. He'd been robbing the people of Nigeria of $1.1 billion. And this is how it happened. Two oil companies, Shell and Italy's Eni, bought a lucrative offshore Nigerian oil block for $1.1 billion. They paid this money to the government of Nigeria, which then made a subsequent payment for an identical amount to a company called Malibu Oil and Gas, which was secretly owned by the former Nigerian oil minister. He had awarded his own company, whilst he was in office, this concession, and was now cashing in on his corruption. Now, Shell and Eni point out that they paid their money to the government of Nigeria, but court documents show that their representatives met the former oil minister, who's called Dan Atete, on a number of occasions while the negotiations were going on, and that they knew he was representing this company, Malibu. When the 1.1 billion reached Malibu, 800 million of it was immediately wired on to another 5 companies with hidden owners, so nobody knows who's benefited. It certainly isn't the Nigerian people. So we can already see 2 things from this: how corruption can happen behind companies with hidden owners, and why those new laws that I mentioned earlier, which would require oil and mining companies to disclose their payments, would have been a really good idea in this case, so that the Nigerian people could see the deals being done on their behalf. Interestingly, Shell is one of the oil companies lobbying against those laws. Anyway, so when the middleman took Malibu to court to claim his fee, it all came out. The court made a finding of fact that the oil minister was the real owner of this company, which is essentially an acknowledgement that this is a seriously dodgy deal. And yet the court awarded the middleman his cut. He got about $110 million. We find this extraordinary. Even more extraordinary is that the CPS and other authorities have not frozen this payment in order to stop him getting it. It's deals like this which help to explain why billions of dollars of Nigerian oil revenue still go missing every year. It's deals like this which help to explain why a larger proportion of Nigerian people live in poverty than before the oil money started to flow. The UK, meanwhile, gives £275 million a year of development aid to Nigeria. I am not suggesting that we stop the aid. I've seen for myself what good aid can do. I am suggesting, though, that we stop fueling the corruption that undermines that aid and prevents oil revenues reaching ordinary people. I am suggesting that we don't let our courts legitimise corrupt deals. I am suggesting that we stop our banks accepting corrupt money. And I am suggesting that perhaps it's time for the land registry to record the real owners of properties, and not just the offshore companies that they're hiding behind. I am basically suggesting that we try and make London a place where those who want to go and work in finance and property and law can do so if they choose, without helping to fuel the corruption that keeps so many people still living in poverty. Thank you.
That was just the powerful speech by Auntie Lawson speaking in London about how London fights corruption. So, guys, there you have it. Very comprehensive, in fact, to detail, emphasizing on the Malibu oil deal. You remember that. So, and somebody could go to court in London to get his own cut of that particular money. So, it tells you much about how we cannot continue to depend on foreign government to help us fight corruption. Fine, they have roles to play if they will stand up to ensure that corrupt fund doesn't get into their country, loot doesn't get into their country. But then again, it's about business, right? So we back home, we have so much to do. We have to do much more and ensure that it's even become more difficult for any government official or appointee of government to steal from the coffers. But if we won't be doing that, we cannot continue to expect foreign governments to always be nice to us. Okay, we'll allow these people steal from Nigeria, then the government will intercept this fund somewhere in the air or by the time they get to their country, and then they will generously return the fund to us for somebody else to loot again and take to their country. You see how it works. So we'll just remain in this vicious cycle. And for us to achieve that, to put an end to this corruption, it's only you and I, the citizen, that can do that by ensuring that we ask critical questions. We do not just keep silent because we benefit from some individuals. It's always nice to query the source of income, money made by government appointees and even public office holders. Until that is done, until we agree that we've had enough of corruption, we're not going to see the end to this. We'll continue to live in this cycle and complain for years to come about poor electricity, bad road, poor healthcare, and all of the rest. While those we elect to represent us, to govern us, to direct us onto the path of greatness, will continue to plunder this country into deep and deeper corruption. My name is Tweetway Ayeno. This is where I want to end the conversation today. Thank you very much for taking time to listen. It's supposed to be 30 minutes with me, but for the length of that video, I really want you to see it to the end, and there you have it. So think about this next time. Just understand that it is business. If we won't stop corruption here in Nigeria, we can't expect foreign government to do that for us. So next election goes soon. Not that we can't do anything now. It's not just about the election. It's about the processes. We should start asking questions, starting from your local government, who they represent you, and all of the rest. Otherwise, there are so many small Diezani around, small Dan Etete around, small corrupt people. And the wider corruption happens at the local government level. Okay, tomorrow we'll be talking about media advertising and of course the business. We couldn't complete that conversation last week because of the network. It was so frustrating. So tomorrow we'll talk about that. And on Wednesday will be time for us to talk about rape, or looking at the mind of a rapist before, during, and after the act. What goes on in the mind of a rapist? I have a psychologist, a psychiatrist, and a sociologist who will be joining me on the program. So on Wednesday. On Thursday will be time with Casey, your Pekete master. Remember, we're going to talk all about his new brand, Badman Casey. And on Friday, June the 12th, is Democracy Day. We'll look at democracy, the pros and the cons. So keep it a date. And on Saturday, my wife and I, we have something juicy this week again. So I want to say thank you very much once again for your time. Do have a wonderful day. As I say, bye.